Wonderful. Let me share my screen. And very, very warm welcome, everyone, to the aMS Southeast Asia event 2021. I'm very, very happy to be here presenting with you. Before I start, you can see on my screen we have some absolutely wonderful sponsors. And so, yeah, please check out their websites. Their logos are on there. We wouldn't be able to run these types of events without our wonderful sponsors. So a big thank you to them. As well, just to let you know before I kick off the session, is that there is a quiz to win prizes. So throughout the two-day event, this QR code that you can see on the screen will be shared by all of the presenters, where you can essentially do a quiz, and there will actually be prizes for the quiz as well. So you might actually be able to win something really exciting. So please make sure that you scan for the quiz, and also to provide any feedback about the event. Feedback really, really helps us improve the event and make it as useful as possible. So this session, we are going to be looking at how to improve student engagement when remote learning with Microsoft Teams. And I gave a slight introduction to myself earlier, but just to give a little bit more detail. So my name is Kat. I'm a Microsoft Solutions Specialist, specialising in Microsoft Teams. I'm based in the UK, working with lots of different universities and schools. You can see some of my links on there. So I do have a blog called collabwithkat.com, and that blog is sharing tips and tricks when using Microsoft Teams. So feel free to check that out. I also am on Twitter, and you can see my LinkedIn QR code there as well. So please feel free to connect with me, follow me. I do try and post updates and new features of Microsoft Teams. So please feel free to connect if you want to. So to start off the session, before I jump into showing you some of the functionality in a live demonstration, I wanted to just talk a little bit about Microsoft Teams supporting the education industry. So Microsoft Teams really is one hub that connects everyone. So Teams can support many different scenarios in the education sector to really help improve teaching and learning. So Teams will support educators connecting with their students from a teaching and learning perspective, and that can help teachers distribute worksheets, manage assignments, and connect with students in a way that supports their learning. We also have professional development, which is another great use case for Teams. We can use Teams to track professional development between educators, staff, and faculty. We could use Teams to help with coordination, so faculty and staff using Teams to actually connect different roles in the institution and to collaborate more effectively. And we've actually even seen Teams being used for research in a lot of different universities that we've worked with. They'll use a team for a particular research project, and what they'll do is actually add tools like Power BI for all of their data analytics, for all of their research data, which is quite interesting. That's not the use case we're focusing on today, but it's quite a cool one to be aware of. And finally, we can build a student community using Teams, so allowing students to create their own teams for projects and clubs, depending obviously on the age, really gives them the autonomy to learn independently and also with their peers. So Teams supports every kind of scenario that we can think of from an education standpoint. And of course, Microsoft Teams is everything connected in one place. So in order to support those scenarios for teaching and learning, Teams provides calling, chat, and team collaboration for educators to connect with their students. They can chat and call with other staff members, and of course, create meetings to hold remote classes. We have the Microsoft 365 applications on the left-hand side, and that provides educators with things like a class notebook, data analytics, PowerPoint presentations, and even things like forms to create quizzes. So these are the kind of inbuilt tools in Microsoft 365 that we're familiar with using every day. As well as Microsoft tools, there are lots and lots of third-party education-specific apps, which you can see on the right-hand side there. And these are applications that are created by third-party providers that can be integrated directly into Microsoft Teams, and they are specific to education. And finally, Teams for Education has tools to help support educators that are built into Teams for Education specifically. So a commercial organisation wouldn't see these types of tools, and that's things like the class notebook, assignments, and insights to see how engaged students are. And I'll show you some examples of those in just a second. So when I say Microsoft Teams for Education is really designed specifically for education, I definitely mean it. So over 183,000 educational institutions are currently using Microsoft Teams, and that number is obviously increasing day by day. Now, if you have the education license, your Teams features will be slightly different to those on a commercial license. And that's because Microsoft have realized that the requirements for an educator are very, very different to those working in commercial or even government organizations. And in Microsoft Teams for Education, there are 4 different team types that you can see on my screen on the right-hand side. So there are teams that are created for the teaching and learning scenario, which are class teams. We have professional learning communities designed as a educator working group. We have a staff team, which is designed for staff administration. And finally, there's a team called Other, which is used particularly for students creating teams for like book clubs, the projects that they have, and so on. And each of these team types have different features. For example, the class team has a class notebook and the ability to distribute assignments for educators. So we can really create a collaborative classroom and even personalize learning with those interactive assignments distributed to students. Staff will have a place to communicate updates, share documents, and keep connected with the staff team. So there are teams that are particularly designed for each scenario that I mentioned early on. And that's really why Microsoft Teams for Education is really, really designed for teams or for education. So let's now take a look at some of those tools in a live demonstration and show you the tools that can really help improve student engagement. So I'm going to navigate now to my demonstration. So you can see on my screen, I am logged into Microsoft Teams, and the first thing you'll see is I am on the Teams tab, and I can see a list of all of my teams. And you'll notice that the 4 team types that I mentioned are appearing here. So you can see I've got a class team, I've got a PLC team, there's a staff team here, a research team. There's different levels and different types of teams that are created depending on the use case. Now, if I am an educator or a teacher and I wanted to create a class for my students, what I could go ahead and do is actually create a new team. And I could do that from the button at the top. And I can go ahead and create that team. And you'll see the 4 team types that I mentioned are appearing here. And if I'm a teacher or an educator and I think, right, I want to create a class. I want a space for me and my students to be able to collaborate on group projects, assignments, and more. In that scenario, I would always choose the class team. And that's the example I wanted to share with you today and some of the features that educators have to really get their students engaged. So for this session, we are going to focus on the class team. But I would highly recommend, if you're not familiar with the different team types, there are lots of really, really great training videos on YouTube and the Microsoft website that go through what each of these teams can actually deliver. So I'd recommend having a look at that. But for now, we're going to create the class team. And I'm going to do a Blue Peter moment. If those people are in the UK, you'll know what I mean by Blue Peter. And I'm going to use one that I created earlier. So today we're going to focus on this 4th grade class. So I'm going to click on the team. And you'll see it's opened the team for me. And as an educator, what you will see on the left-hand side are I have different tabs or apps that have been added automatically for me. So every time I create a new class team, these apps will be added. So I'll be able to see them on the left-hand side. I have a space for channels. So this is where I will have my conversation. So in my channel, I'm in the general channel right now. I can actually see some assignments that have been posted. I can actually send a message into my students to say there's homework or whatever it may be. And of course, I can decide to share files with my students as well. So if there are particular class materials that I want to share, then I can. For now, what we're going to focus on are these specific tools to help with your class team. And the first one is the class notebook. So I'm going to click on this. Now, every time, as I mentioned, every time I create a class team, this will be automatically created. So as an educator, I don't really need to do anything. I don't need to worry about spinning up a new notebook or anything like that. It does it for me. And when I click on the class notebook, it is using OneNote. OneNote for education specifically. So this is a space where me and my students and other teachers or support teachers can actually take notes and collaborate. But it does so much more than that. There are quite a few different features that are designed specifically for educators to help improve your teaching and learning experience. So let's look at the class notebook. I might zoom in actually to make it a little bit easier to see. So if I wanted to, I could choose to show the navigation on the left-hand side. And when you open up the navigation, again, all of this is pre-populated for you, so you don't really need to kind of do anything to create this notebook or any of the sections. It's all done for you, which is great. And you'll see that I have some sections on the left-hand side. So the sections are spaces within the notebook. So in my welcome section, I've got a couple of pages which are telling me things about the notebook. It's giving me some help as an educator to say, okay, here's some links for some training and some help, FAQs on using the class notebook. So I have sections and pages. So your welcome section is always created for you. You will also have a collaboration space. The collaboration space, you'll see when I click on it, it's going to give me a page. So I've got the getting started page in here. The collaboration space is an open space to everybody in the class. So all of your students and any other teachers are able to go into the collaboration space and they're able to, type messages in here. We could even decide to use the pen if we wanted to, and we can kind of all collaborate together. I'll come back to the pen in a second. But the point is that my students and my teachers can go in here and we can collaborate in this space together. There may be situations, though, where you do not want to allow your students to, annotate anything or make notes in your space. So this is where we have the content library. The content library, as you can see under here, is a space that is just for the educator or the teacher to edit. So students will not be able to go in and make notes and draw and annotate or change anything in this section. So this is just for the teacher to store different things like worksheets, homework, and so on. We have a teacher only space, which is for the teacher only. So any support teachers that you have will also be able to see this space. The students will not be able to see this. So when a student opens up their notebook, they're not going to see teacher only because they're not part of this space. So as a teacher, you can put notes in here to your other teachers, if you're doing reviews on student performance or anything like that, you might not want the students to see that, and so you could use the teacher only section. Now, the way that it will differentiate a teacher to a student is in Office 365, there are two licenses that you have in education. There is a faculty license and there is a student license. So all of your students will have that student license and all of your educators will have the faculty license, and that's how it will pick up who is a student and who is a teacher. So don't worry, you don't have to manually add any of your teachers in here. It will automatically recognize that. Underneath, you will see that I actually have a space for all of my students. So I have Adele has a space in the notebook, Alex has a space in the notebook, and these spaces are particularly just specifically for the student. So Adele will only be able to access her sections in her notebook. Alex will only be able to access his sections and so on. So the other students are not able to go in and see anybody else's notebook. Only the student can. And this is where you can, share things like homework. So if you wanted to share a worksheet with Adele, I might actually add that as a page in her section. So she can now open up her homework. She can go in, click on homework, and she'll be able to see what she has to do. It could be a worksheet, could be a drawing, could just be a question that I've asked her to do. What did you do on the weekend? Whatever it may be. And she could go in and access that. Now, one of the things that you might be thinking is, oh my goodness, what if I have 30 students in my class? Do I need to go into every single student's homework section and add in a page for their homework? I would go down here, click add a page, name the page, and then paste whatever it is that I want to share with them. That's quite time consuming. But fear not, because there is a feature that automatically distributes pages to all of your students in the notebook. So here you can see I've got my homework for week 1. What I've actually done with this is I've used the distribute feature in Microsoft Notebook to automatically give all of my students this page. So let me show you how it works. I am going to choose the class notebook tab at the top. I have a worksheet that I want to distribute to all of my students. And now what you would actually do is start it from the content library. So in the content library, I could go in here and add a page, and I could call this homework. Oh, I'm still on draw. That's why. I could go in here and I could say homework week 2. And in here, I could paste a worksheet in here. I could decide to ask a question. So in 100 words, tell me what you did on the weekend. I could ask, a question like that, for example. And then what I would do is choose the class notebook, and I would choose to distribute page. And it will always distribute the page that you're on. So I want to stay on this page and create it in the content library. I don't want to put it in somewhere, where the students can go and edit it, because it's for my use. And I'm going to choose to distribute this page. I could distribute a whole section if I wanted to, but I'm just going to do this page. So I'm going to choose distribute page. And what I could decide to do from here is I could distribute that page to a few of my students or all of them. Now, in this scenario, I'm going to send it to all of them, and each student has their own section. So each student will have a section for class notes, handouts, homework, and so on. So I'm going to choose to distribute this into the homework section. I'm going to click on distribute, and that's going to add that page into all of my students' sections. So that means I don't have to manually go in one by one. I can automatically distribute worksheets, homework, questions, anything that I want to directly from the notebook using this distribute option. And it's automatically doing that. So if you've got 30 students in your class, you've got 30 different notebooks, this is a much quicker way to share that information. Not only does it support it in a remote working scenario, but even, saving teachers having to print out lots and lots of 30 different worksheets and hand those out. And, this just keeps a track of everything. It uses less paper and it just is a lot quicker for the educators. So you can see this is now done. So if I was to go in to see Adele and see her homework, I can see homework for week 2 has been added there. So it's a really great tool to be able to go in, see what my students are doing, and automatically distribute homework and worksheets. But that's not the only thing that the OneNote can do in terms of supporting students in a remote environment. There are students who might struggle with reading. There might also be students where their English is maybe their second language. Their parents maybe don't speak English or the language that of the country that they're in. And so what we want to make sure that we're doing is supporting parents and students when they're at home, being able to watch this screen, and actually read the homework assignment that we've given them. So what I could do as a student is to help me read this better, to help me understand what's being asked of me. I can choose to use what's called an Immersive Reader. So what that means is, as a student, if I'm struggling to maybe see, let's actually go to one that's got more writing in it. There we go. If I'm struggling to read this, what I could choose to do is go to View, and I could open the Immersive Reader. Now, this Immersive Reader, you will see that I could choose, obviously, to play the Immersive Reader. So that means it's going to read this out for me. So as a student, I can better understand what's being asked. It's highlighting each word as it's being said. I could also, as a student, change the voice speed. I could slow it down or speed it up and change the voice selection from female to male. So it is going to help support students when they're learning from home if they're struggling to read the what's on the page. But also, you'll notice there are some words that are highlighted. So what I could choose to do is increase the text size, make it easier for me to read. I could change the theme if the white background is hurting my eyes, and I could choose to change the font again to make it easier for me to read. There are some grammar options. So if I wanted to, I could highlight the nouns, verbs, and adjectives like I've done here, or I could choose to untick those, and it's going to not highlight any of the parts of speech for me. And obviously I could choose to change the color of this as well. So it's going to help me understand what's an adverb, what's a verb, and so on. You could even decide to break it out into syllables, again, helping the child with reading. We also have reading preferences, and this is quite interesting because we could choose to turn on a line focus. So there might be situations where, and I've certainly seen this with schools that we work with, there are students that require support when they are reading. So they'll have like a ruler underneath the page, and they'll read it with the ruler to make it easier for them to see. And how do you do that when you're at home? On a computer, there's not really a way to, unless you put a ruler up to the screen, it's just not very feasible. So what you could decide to do is actually choose line focus. So it's going to help the student. They're going to be able to read the sentence a little bit clearer with the line focus. And that's kind of replacing that, when you have a ruler underneath the piece of paper to help you read. Let's turn the line focus off, and this is where it gets quite cool. What I could decide to do is change the language of the page in OneNote. So if I wanted to, I could change this language to, shall we do Cantonese? There we go. And I'm going to translate the whole document. So you can see it's actually translating live for me, and I can see exactly, if English is my second language, I could translate it to a language that's maybe, more appropriate to me. Let's choose a different one. I could choose to translate by word or translate the entire document. So you can see there, I don't know if we have any check attendees in to see how accurate it is, but we can see here. And obviously what I could decide to do is click on the word. It will actually read out read aloud the pronunciation in Czech and also in English. So it's not only going to support students who have English as a second language, parents who might not speak English or the language of the country. So parents can translate this, read it, and then they can understand how they can help their child with the homework. But also if you're learning a language, if you are learning a language in the classroom, this is a really great way to learn pronunciation, spelling, reading, and writing as well. I might choose to turn this off so we have it back in English so I can understand it at least. There we are. So that's really great. I mean, there's tools in there to help with distribution. There's tools in there to help with the student engagement, to allow their parents to help them and support them being engaged as well. Really, really cool stuff. So that was the class notebook, and that is created automatically for the educator as soon as you create the class team. Another feature that is automatically created when a teacher creates a class team is assignments. Now, assignments, this is where it gets really, really fun and just an absolute amazing time saver for educators out there with their students. Assignments is, you can see in here, it's obviously quite clear what it does. It's going to help educators distribute assignments to their students, and within the class. And you'll see from here that I actually have some existing assignments that I've already shared with my students. I've got geography, there's a maths quiz, they'll input games, and it gives you some information about it. So I can see how many students have actually handed the work in. I can see the due date, and I can see how many have been returned. So what this is doing for an educator is actually helping them take a note of who's handed the work in, when is it due, but also how much have I marked. So have I gone in and reviewed all of my students' work? No, I haven't. I've still got a few more to do. So what I'm going to do from this scenario is I'm going to open up geography, and I can see, oh, I've got to have a look at Ashley's work. I need to look at Adele's work and Alex's. So I need to look at all of this, all of my students' work, homework, make sure that they are, they've done it properly, and then I could choose to write feedback notes and return it to them. Once I've returned the work, it actually appears in this list, so I can keep a track of which students' work I've marked. What I'm going to do is just open up Ashley's work, and we're going to see her homework that has been sent. Now, this is such a great feature of Microsoft Teams. You can see in here straight away, in order to improve student engagement, using the technology like cameras and videos and recordings can be extremely useful. So that in itself is a great way to see if your student is engaged. You can see here that Ashley has a paragraph to read out. And that's her homework. I've said, I want you to read out this paragraph. I want you to record yourself doing it so I can see your pronunciation and I can see how confident you are and if you're engaged, and it's going to help me as an educator. And it's keeping all of that information on one screen for me. I can see her performance, so I can actually play the video. And you'll see this is Ashley recording herself. And then she's reading the paragraph for me. I can hear her. I can see her as if I was in the classroom. A really, really cool feature that's just been introduced is auto detect. So auto detect, I've turned that on, is actually going to help me understand if Ashley has, said the correct words, what her pronunciation is like, if she's self-corrected herself. So here I can see she's done 82 words per minute that were correct. She has a 92% accuracy rate, so she has mispronounced 2 words, she's repeated herself 4 times, and she's corrected herself once. And it's highlighting the space or the word, that is repeated or that she's struggling with. So this is an absolutely amazing tool to automatically mark students' homework and engagement. Yeah, I can see how many attempts that she's done. I can see the level that she's at. I can see when she handed it in. I can view a history of her homework that she's handed in. Is she handing things in on time, or is she always handing in things late? And what I could decide to do is give feedback. Great job. I maybe want to give more detailed feedback than that, but for now I could say great job, and I could choose to return that assignment to the student. So now Ashley will get a notification to say that her homework has been returned, and she can go in and see my feedback. She can see that I've said great job. I could even, decide on a point system. I could say you get 5 points, 10 points, for this. So it's just an absolutely amazing way to track all of your students' assignments, but also see how they're doing when it comes to learning from home. Now, there is an Insights button in here, and I'm going to come back to this in a bit more detail in a second. But from here, Insights is essentially a tool built within Microsoft Teams that is going to track a student's engagement, and it's going to track how many classes they join, so how many meetings they're joining, when they turn their homework on time, if they're replying to messages. And it's going to use all of the telemetry of Office 365 to bring and surface that information to the educator to see how engaged their student is. Now, we can have an overall view of that, or I can from here click on the Insights, and it's going to open up Ashley's Insights, and I can see, is she engaged, what's she like? I can see, again, words per minute. I can see her assignments and get a much better detail of what she's going through and what she's doing. And I can see challenging words here that she struggles with, how many times that she struggled with it. So it's just an absolutely, really powerful tool when it comes to really understanding how engaged your students are. as well as being able to, and then I've returned that, you'll see it's in the returned section. Now, again, I can go in and add extra feedback if I wanted to. So automatic, marking for educators. There's no need to sit down with lots of pieces of paper, red marker, and spend hours and hours on end marking students' work. This is just a tool to help save you a huge amount of time. There is something in here that I wanted to show you, which is there's assignments that I can set my students. So I could do an essay question. I could say, read this paragraph, and record yourself doing it. But what I could also do is I could create a quiz as well. Now, the quiz is actually going to use a tool called Microsoft Forms, which is a really great tool for educators to use to really create quick quizzes for your students. So what I'm going to do, you'll see that I've created a maths quiz previously, but if I wanted to create another quiz and I wanted to share that with my students and ask them to complete it, I could create a new quiz. And it's going to open up Microsoft Forms directly within Microsoft Teams. So I don't even need to move to another website or anything like that. It's doing it for me. Microsoft Forms is a survey tool or a quiz tool that you can quite easily create questions and choose correct answers and share that with students so they can go in and complete it. So I'm going to add my title. I could call this Geography Quiz. I could add a description. I could add an image in here if I wanted to, or change the theme to make it a little bit more fun for my students. I could choose to then ask questions. So do you want to do multiple choice or text or a rating? Let's do text, and let's say, what is the capital of France? I could choose to add a correct answer. So I could write down the correct answer, if I can, Paris, and I could give a point system. So I could say for that answer, if they say Paris, they get 5 points. You can make it a long answer, and you can also make it required, which means they have to complete it to complete the quiz. They can't skip it. You could add multiple choice questions. What is, I keep doing the capital of, and then option 1, option 2. And what you could choose to do is make the option the correct answer. So if I was to say, London, capital of England, I could add that as the correct answer, but I could also add a comment to say, well done, if they got the right answer. So when they click on that answer, it's going to tell them, well done. If they get the wrong answer, I could still write a message to say, try again, not the right answer, and so on. So there's quite a few things that we can do with this to make it quite funky. Again, make it a required answer, allow multiple answers for the student if we wanted to, and again, add a point system. Once I've created my quiz and I'm happy with it, I can hit done. And that's now, for the assignment, it's automatically added in my geography quiz title. It's added a link to the quiz here, and it's counted the total points automatically for me. And what I could choose to do from here is assign that to all of my students or just some of my students, set a due date and a time date. And this is quite nice. I like this because what you can actually do is when you set a timeline. So I'm saying, okay, I'm going to assign this in the future. So as a teacher, you can go in, you can be really prepared. I can set this to a future time. I could choose a due date. So I need to have it handed in by the 27th of October. And I could then choose a close date. And the close date means that if a student hands something in late, they can, but I'm only going to give them a few days. By the 29th, if they haven't handed it in, they're not going to be able to hand it in through Teams. So you can fully customize the assignments, and I'm going to assign that. And what will happen now is it's added my geography quiz to my list, and the students will be able to see it in the channel. They'll be able to go into the general channel, and you can see it's popped up on the banner there, geography quiz. And as a student, I can click, I can view the assignment, and I can choose to open the quiz, complete the quiz, and then it'll tell me who's actually done it. So there's fun things to do to engage students, not just essay questions, but there's different variety of things that we can do: recordings, video, games, quizzes, essay questions. There's a huge amount that it supports, which is very handy. So As well as assignments, obviously, as an educator, grades is a huge part of engaging students and when we're working in Microsoft Teams. So the grades tab is, again, it's automatically created when you create a class team. And from here, I could actually get an overview of all of my students and their grades. So I can see from here that Ashley has handed in her homework. I can see which ones I've returned, so I can get a bit of a view overall what I've actually done. The quizzes in here, I can see the point system. I could see, if I wanted to, I could choose to open the student work from here as well. So as an educator, each student, I can go in and, look at their assignments, I can look at the detail and I can complete those and hand them back, return them. But in the grades, I get that overall view, so I can just keep a track of where I'm at with all of my students. I could choose to even export this to Excel if I wanted to. So grades are a good way to keep a track overall across all of the assignments that you've set. Now, the next tab is a really interesting one. This is the one that I mentioned earlier, so the Insights tab. Now, Insights, I mentioned, is a way for educators to be able to see how engaged their students are. Now, the students will not be able to see this information. It's just for the teachers, it's just for the educators that are in this team. So what you can see when I click on Insights, I have some key areas or bits of information that are being shared with me. I can see any meetings that have been updated. I can see the overall engagement from my students. So I can see there's inactive students. There's 2 students that are not active. And there are less communications within the channel, within my team. I'll come back to this in a second, but we also have the option to look at the assignments over the last 28 days. I can see how many students are missing submissions. I can see the average grade and the average accuracy rate as well in terms of reading progress. So if I have a class of 30 students, how on earth do I make sure that they're engaged when they're all working from home and I can't see them, or learning from home, sorry, and I can't see them? Well, this is a really great tool because this is going to flag up any issues for the educator. So I can see there's actually inactive students. Let's go to track student activity. So what I can see from here, I can see 2 out of 30 are not active. I could scroll down and I can see over time how active they've actually been over the last week. And you'll see Felix and Hannah are highlighted there. They are the students that are not active. So what I could decide to do is I could start a conversation with Felix and ask him how he's doing. So if I see you're not engaged, it's going to, when I click on his name, it will open up a chat message and I'll be able to directly see, it's not allowing me to do it yet because I don't think it's a demo account, but I can actually send him a message and say, how are you doing? Is everything okay? Do you want some help with something? And this will actually, ping to Felix. He can go in, he can answer it. And it's just a good way to flag any students that maybe, are struggling. But I could decide to drill down. So I can highlight Adele, for example. I can see on the 11th of October, she opened the class notebook. Somebody, answered a survey to say how they're feeling. I can see somebody opened a file in here. So I can see exactly what my students are doing, if I wanted to drill that down a little bit more. You can choose to filter. So you can filter based on activities. And I could say, okay, let's look at meetings. So what classes do I have and how many students actually joined the meeting? Apologies if it's not moving. I can see some notifications coming through the screen. Is it moving? It's moving from me. So I might just stop sharing and reshare just to see if that helps you. If I just refresh it, perhaps that will help. Okay, hopefully that helps. My mouse is quite large, so hopefully you can see that. But essentially what I'm doing here, if the screen isn't moving, I'm looking at all of my students' engagements and I can see which meetings they've attended. So on the 11th of October, did they attend my meeting? I can scroll down. I can see Felix didn't actually attend the class. I can see Hannah didn't actually attend the class. So it's flagged those up for me. let's take a look at a class on, maybe the 7th of October. I can go in the meetings and I can see how many students attended my class. There's quite a few students that didn't attend. I can see Amelia did, but Adele didn't, Alex didn't, and so on. So just as I saw a question come through, and I'm glad the screen is back, so that's good. I saw a question there. How do you know if a student didn't attend the class? This is a great tool to see that. Did they attend? Did they not? And if they didn't, I can then start the conversation and say, why didn't you attend this class? Is everything okay? Do you need any help? Do you want me to, send you the recording or do it again? Whatever it is that you would want to speak to your student about. So this is an absolutely amazing tool. So as well as student activity, I can go in, I can see the communication activity. This is the students engaging in the channel. Are they sending reactions? Are they liking messages? Are they replying to messages? If you're not using the channels heavily, I would say the student activity is probably a little bit more useful. But in terms of conversations and what's happening, then yeah, I can go in here and I can get access to that information. So in terms of accessing this data, yep, so you could decide to access, so from the Office 365 Admin Center, you can get the data behind this. It's essentially just the telemetry of Office 365. So it's just based on usage of the technology, and it's pulling all of the usage into an easy view that's going to be useful for teachers and educators. So you can access this data in Office 365. I'll post a link actually. You have to be an administrator, but you can access it and actually put that data into Power BI if you wanted to. And then you could decide to share that data with other people in the institution. So you could pull that. So when the headmaster's seeing the consolidated view, you could pull that data from Office 365, put it into Power BI, and that's where you could share a consolidated view with the headmaster. So they would be able to see the overall data. From the educator perspective, they can only see their class. But if you wanted to, you could put that into Power BI, share it with the headmaster, and then they can see across the board how many, how much people are using the technology and how many people are engaged. So if you haven't looked at Insights, I definitely recommend that you do. It's one of the key ways to track student engagement within Teams. Right, there was a couple of other things that I wanted to talk you through. You'll see on the left-hand side of Teams, an assignments tab. I just wanted to mention that this is a really great way for the educators to see a list of all of the assignments across all teams. So if you have 3 or 4 classes that you're, supporting and teaching, you can actually go into assignments and say, right, okay, overall, what are my assignments? How many have I returned and handed in? So now I'm actually getting a view of all of them together, not actually, just class by class. I don't have to go into each class and actually find out this information. I could just see an overall view assigned. I can create assignments from here and give them to specific classes. So this is just an educator view. The students won't have the ability to see, other people's assignments. It's just the educator to quite easily be able to do this. A couple of other pieces is when you're in a class, in a meeting. So when you start let's go back to the team actually. So what I recommend you do is when you are running a class for Microsoft Teams, it's always a good idea to start the meeting from the class. So what you can see here is I could go into Meet Now at the top and I could start a meeting straight away from this team, or I could choose the drop down and choose to schedule a meeting. So when I schedule the meeting, it will appear in the channel and my students can go in, they can click on it at the time of the class or the meeting. For this example, I am just going to choose Meet Now, and that's going to start a new Teams meeting for me. I'll turn off the camera because it's not a very good angle. And I'm going to join that. Now, the reason why you would want to start or schedule a meeting from a Microsoft team is because anything I do in the meeting will automatically be saved to that team. So if I just go out of it and go into my team, you can see the meeting is in here in the general channel. and my students can click to join it when they're ready in the classroom. So it's just keeping everything in one place. So in the Teams meeting, say you're having you're doing a class. If you wanted to make the class a little bit more interactive, what you could decide to do is actually use what's called the whiteboard functionality. Now, the whiteboard functionality, it does what it says on the tin. It will open a whiteboard, so your students and you as an educator can annotate and edit. So I'm going to click on the whiteboard and open this up. Now, the whiteboard for education is a little bit different to the commercial version because you will have templates that are designed specifically for the whiteboard. So what I could choose to do is I could choose to present the whiteboard so it's just me that's editing it. Or I could decide to collaborate on the whiteboard, which means my students and me as an educator can edit. I can see the screen is, sorry if you're having a bit of an issue. Hopefully it will load. It might just be a little slow. Let me reshare. Let me just reshare it, hopefully, because it fixed it last time. Hopefully that helps. I believe the session is being recorded, so if you did want to go back to see anything, you will be able to do that. So apologies if the screen isn't working for you. I've just reshared it, so hopefully that will help. So what you should see on my screen, hopefully, is a whiteboard that I've opened directly within Microsoft Teams meeting. So what I could do in the whiteboard, because I've chosen collaborate, my students and me, we can all collaborate on it together. And of course you have pens, highlighters in here. You know, I have an eraser, a rubber that I can use. But on the left-hand side, you have notes. So I could quickly create a post-it note. So I could decide, okay, we're going to choose the yellow post-it note. I could choose text. So if I wanted to type something out or some notes, change the color of the text, or delete it. Shapes, I could decide to add some shapes in here. Reactions, so I can love or correct people's work. So I can say, oh, okay, we're going to say that's correct, that's great. Oh, no, that answer is wrong, sorry, or a thumbs up. So it's just quite a fun way when your students are annotating it, you as an educator can go in and you can collaborate. But the one I wanted to focus on is the template one, because this is specifically designed for education institutions, which is to really provide templates to support you as an educator. So if you're doing brainstorming, it will provide you with some diagrams and some different formatted templates to help with brainstorming. If you're doing a game, there are, choose your favorite or 2 truths, 1 lie. So there's games that are actually built in. And you'll see when I add the template in here, if we just zoom in, my students can, we can have a look at, we could collaborate on this. So, put your favorite TV show or your movie if you want to, Paw Patrol or whatever it may be, and we can collaborate on that. Or I could use 2 truths and 1 lie. I could zoom in my team or my students can actually go in. We can collaborate on this. And it just works, really, really seamlessly. And anything that we do in here is going to be saved to the team. So if I was to hang up this meeting and finish this meeting, what we'll be able to see in a second is the whiteboard will actually, be saved to this meeting in the Teams meeting. So we can go in and we can access this after as well. So that's why you would want to also keep things in the Teams meeting, because everything's saved in one place. So there's huge, possibility when it comes to Teams and engaging students. There are interactive whiteboards that are specifically for educators. There's automatic assignments distribution. There's helping students at home reading with Immersive Reader. As an educator, you can see which students are engaged and turning up to your classrooms. And this also supports students in the class as well as at home. We can still utilize all of these tools. Students now are used to working on laptops and computers, and so we can use these tools in the classroom to automate that process for educators. I can see a couple of questions in the chat, so let me just have a quick look. Oh, it's about the screen, that's fine. Can we actually link the notebook to the assignments tab? So no, at the moment, in the assignments tab, all I can see are the assignments that I've shared with my students. And then I would have the notebook assigned to the team. So not at the moment. When we use Whiteboard, it can't be recorded for students to watch again or for students absent to watch the lesson. It should record the whiteboard. I thought it automatically saved the whiteboard to the team. Let's go back to it and see where it's... Because that's not very good if it doesn't. Because that's one of the key things you would want to do is you can save it as an image. So when you're in the meeting, if you click on the 3 dots next to the whiteboard, you can save as a JPEG image and then share that with your students. I did think it automatically did that. Apologies. I thought it automatically added the whiteboard in here. It doesn't look like it has. So I would say save it as an image and then add it to the Files tab for students to be able to go back and look at it. Wonderful. Okay, so that was everything that I wanted to cover in the session today. I really wanted to focus in on the key features, and hopefully if I've shown you some of the tools that you weren't aware of to help with your student engagement. We have a few minutes left now for any questions, but please, as I mentioned, join the quiz. I'll leave the code in there so you can scan that and provide feedback. But thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure to run the session with you. And I hope you go away and start using Teams for your student engagement. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kate. It was a really nice session and very useful for everyone, actually. Hope. Hey guys, if you have any question, you can unmute and can ask, or you can put in the chat box. Yeah.
Hey Kat, what is the most difficult part to getting teachers to adopt some of these features?
Well, teachers are, I guess, one of the biggest things that we've seen is time. Time to learn to use the tool, because they're extremely busy and don't. When we kind of speak to teachers, they got class after class after class. Even though these tools can help them save time in the future, we struggle to get teachers to sit down and learn how to use the technology because they say they don't have enough time. And also a lot of teachers, although, you know, everybody's used to using a laptop, some of them aren't very technically literate, if that makes sense. So they struggle with using the technology, and if they're not comfortable doing it, they don't want to do it for their students. So we have some resistance there when it comes to being comfortable with the technology, and then time to actually be trained is the two things we see being struggles that we will obviously have to work through. Yeah,
that's quite common. How about reusing of template? Because I noticed that a lot of teachers, they basically start everything from scratch all over again. Have they been adopting it in a way that they can start to, you have people who will reuse content amongst different teachers so that one person can just focus on one subject rather than having to create content for all subjects?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that is, I guess, one of the key things about using something like Teams is that you can just create something and then it's reused. And there's lots of different things in terms of templates within Microsoft Teams, not just for the whiteboard or anything like that, but for teachers to use, for their students. So yeah, we definitely see a lot of that within Microsoft Teams and for education.
How about for subjects where they are a lot more vocal interaction? Have you guys working with Flipgrid?
Flipgrid, so not a huge amount. We've got schools that have integrated that into Microsoft Teams quite successfully because they use that already. And the whole idea, or the struggle that some of our schools have found is, we already use it. We paid for it as well. Our teachers are going to freak out if we have to say we're not using that anymore. We're just going to use Teams. So sorry, I don't know if I got your question quite there, but yes, we've seen teachers using Flipgrid and integrating that into Teams. If that was your question, sorry.
Yes, that was my question, because I find that for, let's say, for an English class or something about with communication skills, Flipgrid would be a beautiful addition into Teams for all this, yeah.
Definitely, and it's one of the apps that are easily integrated directly into Teams as well. So it's one of those education specific ones for Teams.
So if you haven't noticed, I have actually added a link there. It's a YouTube link to about Masterclass, which is one of the key prizes that we will be winning. I have been using Masterclass. It is a fantastic content, so do make sure you take the time to fill up the quiz and you stand a chance to win a valuable gift from all of us. Yeah. Any more questions?
Yeah, I think there is one question. Is there a place where an admin can access and download the usage data or customized reporting tenant instead of each educator doing that?
Yes, let me grab a link for you, and there's basically on the docs website it will tell you where, but let me grab that and I'll paste it into this chat while we're waiting for the other questions. There is, and what you can do is pull that data into Power BI, and then because Power BI comes with Office 365, you'll have the free version. You can then distribute those dashboards and reports through Power BI and share it with people who are not administrators. So the headmaster question that we had earlier, you could definitely do that and share that with your educators. You definitely don't want all your teachers being admins to be able to go and download that. So let me grab that link now for you.
Yeah, that is a really useful. In fact, one of the things I always wish that is that there would be a way where after every meeting there's an automatic consolidation of the attendance record into a single table. That would be really fun,
There we go. I've just pasted that link. But yes, definitely. Yeah. But there's the link for you.